Be good?
Don't mind if I do. Give us a light.
Yeah, that's right.
From legends like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford to music icons like Peggy Lee and bold personalities like Tallulah Bankhead, we'll explore the stories behind the smoke, each one unique, but all united by a single, smoky thread. Let's step back in time, pull back the velvet curtain, and meet the leading ladies whose love for tobacco left a permanent mark on Hollywood history. Amanda Blake. When you think of tough-as-nails women in television history, Amanda Blake is sure to come to mind. Best remembered as Miss Kitty on the long-running TV series Gunsmoke, Amanda's image was that of a feisty, red-haired saloon owner who didn't back down from anyone. But off-screen, Blake battled a very different kind of foe: nicotine addiction. Amanda's smoking habit began early and escalated quickly. By the height of her career, she was reportedly smoking 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day, a staggering amount by any standard. On the Gunsmoke set, it was common to see Amanda with a cigarette in hand between takes, the air around her tinged with tobacco. Cast and crew worried about her, but the pressures of Hollywood and the grind of a weekly television schedule kept her reaching for another smoke. Inevitably, the consequences caught up. In 1977, Amanda underwent surgery for oral cancer, a condition directly linked to her heavy smoking. The experience was harrowing, but Amanda turned her suffering into advocacy. She became a passionate spokesperson for the American Cancer Society, traveling the country to warn others of the dangers of cigarettes. She even testified before Congress, describing herself as a victim of smoking and urging for stronger warning labels on cigarette packaging. Sadly, Amanda's health continued to decline. In 1989, she died at the age of 60. Her passing was a tragic reminder that even the brightest stars can be dimmed by addiction. Still, Amanda Blake's legacy lives on, not just as Miss Kitty, but as a cautionary tale and a fighter who tried to make a difference with her final years. Audrey Hepburn. Grace, elegance, timeless style. When people think of Audrey Hepburn, they picture pearls, little black dresses, and her unforgettable smile. But behind the camera, Audrey struggled with a powerful addiction that followed her throughout her life: smoking. Audrey began smoking as a teenager, shortly after World War II, in a time when cigarettes were considered glamorous and even therapeutic. For Hepburn, who endured hunger and hardship during the war, cigarettes became a source of comfort and calm. As her film career soared, so did her dependency. By the height of her fame, she was reportedly smoking up to 3 packs a day, about 60 cigarettes daily. On set, Audrey was rarely without a cigarette, and her favorite brands included Gold Flake, which she smoked elegantly through a long holder, and later, Kent cigarettes. For Hepburn, smoking was not just a habit, but a coping mechanism for her anxiety and introverted nature. The juxtaposition of her serene public image and her private struggle only adds to her mystique. Unfortunately, the consequences were severe. In her later years, Audrey was diagnosed with a rare form of appendix cancer, and while the link to her decades of smoking was never confirmed, it was often suspected. She continued to smoke, even as she shifted her focus to humanitarian work with UNICEF. Audrey Hepburn's legacy as an icon of style, talent, and humanitarianism is undiminished. But her story also stands as a poignant reminder of the hidden battles behind Hollywood's most radiant faces. Her struggle with smoking was as much a part of her journey as her legendary career. Audrey Meadows. Audrey Meadows may be best known for her comedic timing as Alice Cramden in The Honeymooners, but her personal story is a far cry from sitcom laughs. With a life marked by both achievement and tragedy, Audrey's long battle with smoking ultimately became a defining chapter. Born in 1922, Audrey was multilingual, bright, and talented. But the pressures of show business, coupled with her own anxieties, led her down the path of smoking early on. For decades, she was a fixture at Hollywood parties and on set, a lit cigarette never far from her fingers. The health toll was devastating. In 1995, Audrey received a diagnosis that would change everything: lung cancer. Doctors gave her only a year to live. Rather than undergo aggressive treatments, Audrey opted for palliative care, choosing quality of life in her final months. She slipped into a coma and passed away in 1996 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Her gravestone, curiously, lists an incorrect birth year, a final mystery for a woman who lived life with both candor and enigma. Beyond her acting, Audrey was a woman of many talents, speaking Chinese before English, and showing resilience through both her career and her personal struggles. Her death stands as a stark reminder that the cost of smoking can be more than just physical. It can also rob the world of a unique talent far too soon. Barbara Stanwyck. A true survivor of the Hollywood system, Barbara Stanwyck's life story reads like the script of a classic film noir, complete with triumph, heartbreak, and a dark, smoky haze. Born Ruby Stevens in 1907, Stanwyck faced tragedy early, losing her mother at age 4 and being abandoned by her father soon after. Raised by an older sister, she had to grow up fast. Stanwyck's introduction to cigarettes came shockingly early, at just 9 years old. By her teenage years, she was already a seasoned smoker, using tobacco to cope with the tough realities of life and the pressure cooker environment of the entertainment industry. As she moved from chorus girl to leading lady, her cigarette habit followed her everywhere. She was rarely seen without a cigarette, both on screen and off. Barbara's work ethic was legendary. She starred in classics like Double Indemnity and Stella Dallas, her image often punctuated by a smoldering cigarette that became part of her signature look. But behind the tough-as-nails persona, smoking took a relentless toll on her health. Chronic bronchitis and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease plagued her later years, conditions almost certainly linked to her decades of smoking. Stanwyck only gave up smoking 4 years before her death, but by then, the damage was done. She died in 1990 at age 82 from heart failure and COPD. Her ashes were scattered over the Lone Pine area, a nod to her beloved Western film roles. Barbara Stanwyck's story is one of resilience, grit, and ultimately, the inescapable consequences of a lifetime spent under the cloud of smoke. Bette Davis. There are few faces more synonymous with old Hollywood than Bette Davis. With her piercing eyes, commanding voice, and unflinching presence, Davis became a legend on and off the screen, and so did her smoking habit. Bette started smoking at a young age and quickly became known for her chain smoking, both in life and in her films. Her raspy, distinctive voice, so iconic it became her trademark, was shaped by years of tobacco use. She was said to smoke up to 4 packs a day, even lighting up in the dentist's chair, or while waiting for appointments. On set, Davis insisted on realism. If her character smoked, so did she, and she was meticulous about keeping cigarettes lit for authenticity. The impact was not only professional. In her later years, Davis suffered a stroke that impaired her speech and mobility, and she battled breast cancer as well. Still, she never managed to quit smoking, continuing her habit right up until her passing in 1989 at the age of 81. Bette Davis's legacy is unshakable, a powerhouse performer, an Oscar winner, and an uncompromising personality. But her life also stands as a cautionary tale about the insidious grip of addiction and the way Hollywood's golden glamour often masked its darkest realities. Elizabeth Taylor. Few stars in Hollywood history shine as brightly as Elizabeth Taylor. Her violet eyes, tumultuous romances, and scene-stealing performances made her one of the last great icons of the classic studio system. But while Taylor's beauty was legendary, she also wrestled privately, and sometimes publicly, with a lifelong smoking habit that contributed to many of her health problems. Taylor began smoking as a teenager, swept up in the era's belief that cigarettes were glamorous and sophisticated. The pressures of fame, the constant attention from the press, and her string of high-profile marriages all played a role in fueling her addiction. Whether on set or at home, Liz was often photographed with a cigarette in hand. Her deep, sultry voice, one of her trademarks, grew huskier over the years, shaped in part by decades of tobacco use. As she moved through the decades, Taylor faced mounting health issues, including multiple surgeries, respiratory problems, and congestive heart failure. Even as medical science revealed the dangers of smoking, Taylor found quitting almost impossible, a fact she lamented to friends and family. Her hospitalizations for heart and lung issues became more frequent, and while she eventually tried to cut back, the damage was done. Elizabeth Taylor passed away in 2011 at the age of 79 from congestive heart failure. Her incredible legacy as a two-time Academy Award winner, a philanthropist, and a trailblazer for HIV/AIDS awareness remains undiminished. But her lifelong battle with smoking is a poignant reminder of how even the brightest stars can fall prey to addiction, and how Hollywood's glamour often concealed its grimmer realities. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway's image is inextricably linked with a certain kind of hard-edged glamour, the rebellious, cigarette-toting anti-heroine. Whether she was playing Bonnie Parker in Bonnie and Clyde, or the icy Evelyn Mulray in Chinatown, Dunaway's on-screen presence was magnetic, her style both tough and vulnerable. And always, there was the ever-present cigarette, almost a co-star in her most memorable roles. Off-camera, Dunaway was no stranger to smoking herself. Throughout much of her career, she was frequently seen with a cigarette, both on and off set. The Hollywood machine of the 60s and 70s still encouraged the belief that cigarettes were part of the mystique, a symbol of sophistication and power. For Dunaway, the habit became a kind of armor against the pressures of stardom and the demands of fame. Her distinctive voice, a low, slightly gravelly tone, only added to her appeal, but it was also shaped by years of smoking. Dunaway's personal life, often turbulent and marked by high-profile relationships and dramatic career turns, sometimes mirrored the complex character she played. The cigarettes, for her, were both a prop and a crutch. Though Faye Dunaway's career spanned many decades and earned her countless accolades, the toll of her smoking was evident as she aged. Like so many of her peers, she eventually faced health consequences that forced her to reevaluate her choices. Still, the image of Dunaway, poised and defiant with a cigarette, remains etched in cinema history, a testament to both her talent and to the allure and danger of Hollywood's smoky past. Jean Harlow. Known as the original blonde bombshell, Jean Harlow was one of Hollywood's first true sex symbols. With platinum hair and a mischievous glint in her eye, she dazzled audiences in classics like Hell's Angels, Red Dust, and Dinner at 8. But beneath her glamorous exterior, Harlow was a product of her era, a time when studio culture, social norms, and personal pressures all contributed to her heavy smoking. Harlow's life and career moved at a breathless pace, and smoking quickly became a daily ritual, both as a means of relaxation and as a way to fit in with Hollywood's elite. She was frequently seen with a cigarette, on and off set, her image forever tied to the seductive haze of 1930s glamour. Smoking was such a fixture in her life that it became almost inseparable from her public persona. Tragically, Harlow's life was cut short at just 26. While she died of acute kidney failure, many biographers note that her body had already suffered from a combination of harsh chemicals used to maintain her platinum hair, the stress of constant publicity, and her heavy smoking habit. Though cigarettes weren't the direct cause of her death, they contributed to her overall decline, compounding the physical stress that defined her brief but blazing journey through Hollywood. Jean Harlow's legend endures, a symbol of both the heady freedoms and the hidden costs of early stardom. Her legacy, wrapped in smoke and silver screen glamour, stands as both an inspiration and a warning from Hollywood's golden era. Greta Garbo. Few stars are as shrouded in mystery and allure as Greta Garbo. Known for her iconic performances in films like Camille and Anna Karenina, Garbo exuded a cool detachment that was both magnetic and enigmatic. Off-screen, her private nature only added to the myth, but one habit she didn't bother to hide was her love for cigarettes. Garbo was a chain smoker for much of her life, both on and off the screen. Her love of cigarettes began in the 1920s, and by the time she was at the peak of her fame, she was rarely seen without her trademark cigarette holder, a prop that quickly became part of her image. For Garbo, smoking was more than just a habit. It was a statement, an accessory that complemented her sophisticated, world-weary persona. Her smoking habit followed her into private life, where she maintained her reputation for independence and self-sufficiency. Though Garbo withdrew from the public eye at the height of her fame, her fondness for cigarettes never faded. Her smoky voice and inscrutable charm became her signature, celebrated in magazine spreads and public appearances. The health consequences, as for many of her peers, were substantial. Although Garbo kept her later years intensely private, it's clear that decades of smoking took their toll. Still, her legacy remains untarnished, an enduring symbol of Hollywood's mystique, her image forever entwined with the elegant haze of cigarette smoke. Irene Ryan. While Irene Ryan is best remembered as the feisty Granny Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies, her life off-screen was marked by a battle with a powerful addiction. From a young age, Irene was a heavy smoker, and her dependence on cigarettes was known to all who worked with her. Ryan's on-set smoking was legendary. She was rarely seen without a cigarette, even during breaks between scenes. Her colleagues often expressed concern, but the pressures of live performance and a long career in vaudeville, stage, and television made quitting seem impossible. For Ryan, cigarettes were a constant companion, a way to steady her nerves and keep up with the demands of her busy schedule. In 1973, while starring in the Broadway musical Pippin, tragedy struck. Ryan suffered a sudden stroke on stage, forcing her to return home to California for medical care. Doctors discovered she had an inoperable malignant brain tumor, an aggressive glioblastoma, alongside advanced heart disease. Despite medical efforts, her health rapidly deteriorated, and she passed away at age 70. Irene Ryan's addiction to cigarettes was a defining part of her life, one that ultimately contributed to her decline. Her story is a sobering example of how even the brightest talents can fall victim to addiction, and how Hollywood's relentless pace often exacted a heavy price. Jackie Kennedy. Though not a Hollywood actress, Jackie Kennedy's enduring style, poise, and mysterious aura earned her a place in the pantheon of 20th-century icons. Known the world over as the elegant First Lady beside President John F. Kennedy, Jackie cultivated an image of immaculate grace, a look that deliberately hid one of her most persistent habits: smoking. Jackie was a lifelong smoker, starting in her teens and eventually smoking up to 3 packs a day for more than 40 years. Remarkably, very few photographs exist of Jackie with a cigarette. She was fiercely protective of her public persona, ensuring that photographers respected her wishes and that the press kept her habit out of print. Even close friends and White House staff knew better than to mention her smoking in public. For Jackie, cigarettes were more than a vice. They were a coping mechanism during times of extreme stress, from the pressures of public life to the tragedies she endured, including the assassination of her husband and the subsequent scrutiny. Smoking became her private solace, a rare form of control in a world that often spun beyond her command. Despite her best efforts to keep her habit private, those closest to her knew the risks. The long-term health effects took their toll, and while she rarely spoke about it publicly, her story is a reminder that behind even the most carefully crafted public images, personal struggles can smolder out of sight. Jackie Kennedy remains an American icon, a woman of intelligence and taste, whose hidden struggles add another layer of complexity to her legendary life. Joan Crawford. No one embodied Hollywood's duality of glamour and grit quite like Joan Crawford. From her earliest days as a dancer to her Academy Award-winning turn in Mildred Pierce, Crawford's persona was that of a strong, unstoppable woman. But behind the scenes, Joan had a constant companion, a cigarette. Crawford began smoking young, swept up by the era's idea that cigarettes were a mark of sophistication and confidence. As her fame soared, so did her habit. On screen, she made smoking look both glamorous and intimidating, using the cigarette as a prop to express power or seduction. Off-screen, she was rarely without one, whether at Hollywood parties or late-night film shoots. The long-term effects became impossible to hide. Her skin weathered, and her health declined as the decades passed. Crawford continued to smoke through triumphs and tribulations. Her tumultuous marriages, battles with studios, and the pressures of maintaining her perfect image. In her later years, Joan was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a disease that hit her as she was already struggling with declining mobility and social isolation. Crawford's death at 73 marked the end of a complicated life, both celebrated and haunted by the choices she made. Her legacy endures, an indelible figure of classic Hollywood, whose penchant for cigarettes mirrored the highs and lows of a remarkable, turbulent career. Julie London. Julie London captivated audiences with her sultry voice and captivating stage presence. Known for her hit Cry Me a River and her role in the TV drama Emergency, Julie's image was synonymous with sophisticated cool, a cool that was, in part, fueled by her lifelong relationship with cigarettes. London began smoking at 16, and over the years, her habit intensified to more than 3 packs a day. The smoke, she admitted, gave her voice a husky, intimate quality that many considered part of her appeal. But the reality was far less glamorous. By the 1990s, her health was in decline. In 1995, Julie suffered a stroke, and by 1999, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. Too frail to endure aggressive treatment, she chose not to fight the disease with modern medicine. Julie's final years were marked by hardship, but she continued to share her music with the world until her body simply could not keep up. She died in October 2000 at the age of 74, leaving behind a legacy of smoky ballads and timeless performances. London's story is a haunting example of how the very thing that contributed to her iconic sound also contributed to her decline. A tragic but fitting reflection of Hollywood's complicated relationship with cigarettes. Kathleen Turner. Kathleen Turner's unmistakable voice is her signature, rich, raspy, and instantly recognizable. Throughout her career, in films like Body Heat and Romancing the Stone, Turner's bold presence and husky tone have set her apart. But that unforgettable voice is due in part to her long history as a smoker. Turner has always been candid about her love of smoking, never shying away from discussing it in interviews. Throughout her decades-long career, cigarettes were her constant companions, on movie sets, at parties, and during grueling Broadway rehearsals. Turner credits her smoking, in part, for the unique vocal quality that defined her roles as femme fatales and powerful women. But the years of heavy smoking have also taken their toll. Turner's voice grew more gravelly, and as the health risks of smoking became clearer, she struggled with related issues. Despite her tough public persona, Turner faced personal and professional challenges, including a difficult divorce, a decade of single parenting, and bouts with chronic illness, all made harder by her ongoing addiction. Today, Turner's voice and talent remain indelible, but her battle with cigarettes stands as both a testament to her old-school Hollywood authenticity and a cautionary tale. Her story, like so many others on this list, is a mix of triumph and tragedy, brilliance and vulnerability, forever marked by the smoky haze of her era. Lana Turner. With her platinum blonde hair and magnetic screen presence, Lana Turner defined Hollywood glamour for over 5 decades. But beyond the glitz, Lana's personal life was a storm of scandal, heartbreak, and addiction. Her relationship with cigarettes, emblematic of the hidden struggles that shaped her fate. Born Julia Jean Mildred Frances Turner in 1921, Lana rose from a humble background to become one of MGM's biggest stars. Her beauty and talent drew millions to the box office, but the pressures of fame and a series of tumultuous marriages led her to seek comfort in cigarettes and alcohol. Her addiction became so pronounced that publicists were often tasked with airbrushing cigarettes out of promotional photos. Turner's heavy smoking followed her into later life, exacting a brutal toll. In 1992, she was diagnosed with throat cancer and underwent radiation therapy. Briefly, she seemed to rebound, but the cancer returned. Lana's final years were marked by illness, dramatic weight loss, and the pain of being fed through a tube. She retreated from public life, and in 1995, passed away at 75. Lana Turner's legacy as a screen siren endures, but her life story is a poignant warning about the costs of addiction, a reminder that the silver screen's brightest lights often hid the deepest shadows. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball was more than a comedian. She was a force of nature. As the star of I Love Lucy, Lucille's comic genius transformed television and made her one of the most beloved figures of the 20th century. But away from the slapstick and laughter, Lucy had a very real, very serious addiction: cigarettes. From the earliest days of her career, Lucille was a loyal smoker. In fact, her love for Chesterfield cigarettes was so strong that even cigarette advertising became part of her professional life. She famously worked with sponsors from both Philip Morris and Chesterfield, cleverly hiding her preferred brand in a competitor's tin when necessary. On set, Lucy was often seen with a cigarette between takes. It was such a routine that it sometimes caused production delays, as she'd insist on finishing her smoke before cameras rolled. Lucille's smoking was a defining feature, contributing to her gravelly laugh and unmistakable voice. But decades of heavy tobacco use came at a cost. By the late 1980s, her health deteriorated. Lucille developed serious heart problems, undergoing surgery for a ruptured aorta in 1989. Though the surgery was initially successful, her body never fully recovered. She passed away soon after at age 77. Lucy's impact on television and comedy is unmatched, but her story is also a testament to the dangers that often lurk behind a seemingly unbreakable facade. Lucille Ball's laughter and legacy will echo for generations, while her struggle with cigarettes remains a sobering footnote in a brilliant career. Mae West. Mae West was an original, unapologetic, bold, and always in command. With her quick wit and sultry walk, she broke boundaries in Hollywood, redefining how women could act, speak, and live. Cigarettes, of course, were part of her act and her reality. Mae's public persona thrived on shock value. In the 1930s and 40s, she was known as much for her innuendo-laden dialogue as her iconic image, complete with a cigarette perched between perfectly painted lips. Smoking was both a performance and a pleasure for Mae. She smoked for dramatic effect on stage and screen, but she also smoked heavily in her personal life, rarely shying away from her favorite vice. As she aged, Mae remained a regular smoker, and even when her health began to falter, she never fully abandoned her beloved cigarettes. In her final years, she suffered 2 strokes that left her partially immobilized and eventually contributed to her death at age 87 in 1980. While smoking wasn't the only cause, doctors acknowledged that decades of tobacco use weakened her body. Mae West's name is synonymous with empowerment, sex appeal, and wit, but also with the era's belief that smoking was part of what made a woman daring. Her story is a reminder that strength and vulnerability often go hand in hand, and that behind the bravado, there's always a human cost. Marlene Dietrich. Few stars embodied the smoky glamour of old Hollywood like Marlene Dietrich. With her sculpted cheekbones, androgynous style, and world-weary eyes, Dietrich turned cigarette smoking into an art form, on and off the screen. Marlene's love affair with cigarettes started early. She smoked up to 50 a day, lighting up between takes, during interviews, and at glamorous Hollywood parties. The cigarette became an extension of her persona, signaling both sophistication and rebellion. Dietrich's roles in films like Morocco and Destry Rides Again are iconic in part because of how she handled a cigarette, seductively, defiantly, or with languid indifference. But Marlene's real-life smoking went far beyond her screen image. Throughout her long career, and even as she aged, she rarely appeared in public without a cigarette. As her health declined, Dietrich withdrew to her Paris apartment, living in near isolation, suffering from mobility issues and other complications, many exacerbated by decades of tobacco use. While her official cause of death at age 90 in 1992 was kidney failure, the role of smoking in her physical decline was never in doubt. Dietrich's image remains one of the most enduring of Hollywood's golden age, sophisticated, mysterious, and always shrouded in a cloud of smoke. A lasting reminder of a time when cigarettes were both a symbol of power and a harbinger of tragedy. Maureen O'Hara. With her fiery red hair and piercing green eyes, Maureen O'Hara was the ultimate leading lady. Beautiful, tough, and impossible to ignore. She was unforgettable in classics like The Quiet Man and Miracle on 34th Street. Off-screen, O'Hara carried the same boldness, including a well-known love of cigarettes. Smoking was a staple of the Hollywood lifestyle in O'Hara's heyday, and Maureen embraced it wholeheartedly. Whether at Hollywood galas or behind the scenes on set, she was often seen with a cigarette in hand, a symbol of the confident, independent women she so often portrayed. Smoking, for Maureen, was both an accessory and a private comfort, a way to unwind after long days filming or dealing with the stresses of fame. As time passed, Maureen continued to smoke, even as the dangers became clear. The health effects were significant, and like many of her peers, she eventually faced a series of illnesses and the overall decline that comes with a lifetime of tobacco use. Still, Maureen O'Hara remains one of the most iconic actresses of Hollywood's golden age. Her smoky image, fiery, self-assured, and always unapologetic, reminds us of a time when cigarettes were seen as part of the allure, rather than the threat we know them to be today. Nancy Sinatra. Nancy Sinatra, the name conjures up images of boots, miniskirts, and a voice as smoky as the jazz clubs she once performed in. Daughter of the legendary Frank Sinatra, Nancy carved out her own niche in the music world with hits like "These Boots Are Made for Walkin'." But her trademark style also included a fondness for cigarettes that matched the times. For Nancy, smoking was both a part of her public persona and her private life. She was often photographed with a cigarette in hand, the smoky haze adding to her cool, confident image. On television, in movies, and on the cover of albums, the cigarette became as much a signature as her go-go boots. Like many artists of the 1960s and 70s, Nancy's smoking habit was seen as chic and rebellious, a symbol of independence. But the cost was real. Decades of smoking left their mark on her health, contributing to a voice that grew huskier over time and a list of medical challenges in later years. Still, Nancy Sinatra's career was defined by boldness and style, and her embrace of smoking reflects both the freedom and the dangers of her era. Her story stands as a reminder of how cultural norms can shape habits, sometimes with lasting consequences. Peggy Lee. Peggy Lee was the very definition of cool. Her silky voice, understated elegance, and musical artistry made her a star across generations. Known for hits like Fever and Is That All There Is, Peggy's public persona was that of a jazz chanteuse whose calm masked a life of passion, heartbreak, and private struggles. One of those struggles was a lifelong addiction to cigarettes. Peggy's smoking habit started in the early days of her career, when the haze of jazz clubs and recording studios made cigarettes seem like a natural extension of her artistic life. On stage, she often appeared with a cigarette, its glowing tip punctuating the notes of her sultry melodies. Offstage, she was rarely seen without one, even as her fame grew and her music reached new heights. For Lee, cigarettes were more than just an accessory. They were a constant companion through the highs and lows of stardom, from difficult relationships to the grind of touring. But the years of heavy smoking inevitably left their mark. Her health declined, her voice grew rougher, and she faced a host of smoking-related illnesses in her later life. Despite the toll, Peggy Lee's legacy endures. Her voice, at once intimate and powerful, helped define an era of American music. Yet her story is also a reminder of how the very things that make us unique can sometimes bring us the most pain. Rita Hayworth. Dubbed the love goddess of the 1940s, Rita Hayworth's beauty and talent were legendary. Films like Gilda and CoverGirl turned her into a symbol of glamour and desire. But beneath the dazzling surface, Rita struggled with insecurity, a demanding industry, and a dependence on cigarettes that became a constant throughout her life. Rita's Hollywood image was inseparable from her smoking habit. On screen, she often used a cigarette as a prop, making it a symbol of her sensual, confident characters. Off-screen, Hayworth's reliance on tobacco only grew, fueled by the pressures of stardom, turbulent marriages, and a battle with fragile mental health. As the years passed, the effects of heavy smoking became more apparent. Hayworth's health declined, and while her official cause of death was complications from Alzheimer's disease, friends and biographers noted that her lifelong tobacco use played a significant role in her physical decline. Still, Rita Hayworth's allure remains undimmed. She was a woman of both strength and vulnerability. Her legacy a reminder of the complex realities behind Hollywood's most captivating faces, and the toll that addiction can take, even on the brightest of stars. Cyd Charisse. Few dancers ever graced the screen with the grace and athleticism of Cyd Charisse. Famous for her roles in classics like Singin' in the Rain and The Bandwagon, Charisse brought elegance and fire to every performance. But like so many of her contemporaries, Cyd's life behind the scenes was marked by a steady relationship with cigarettes. Charisse's smoking habit developed alongside her career, as cigarettes were as much a part of Hollywood's social scene as martinis and designer gowns. Whether in rehearsal, on set, or at a star-studded party, Cyd was often seen with a cigarette, its delicate holder accentuating her long dancer's fingers. Despite her remarkable physical discipline as a dancer, Cyd couldn't escape the effects of years of smoking. While she remained in good shape for much of her career, the long-term consequences became clearer with age. Her health suffered, and her voice took on a deeper, more gravelly timbre. Charisse's story, like that of so many Golden Age stars, is one of brilliance touched by vice. Her legacy in dance and film is unquestioned, but her experience also stands as a testament to the pervasiveness and the risks of Hollywood's smoky past. Sophia Loren. Sophia Loren is the epitome of international stardom, regal, striking, and fiercely independent. The Italian actress's career spanned over 6 decades, earning her Oscars and global admiration. But as much as Sophia's public image was shaped by her beauty and talent, it was also influenced by a love of cigarettes that accompanied her through the highs and lows of fame. In Loren's era, smoking was seen as fashionable and sophisticated, especially in Europe, where cigarettes were part of the cultural landscape. Sophia often appeared in public with a cigarette, the elegant accessory complementing her couture gowns and film star mystique. On screen and off, she embodied the sultry glamour of her generation. For Loren, smoking was both a personal pleasure and a professional prop. The stress of international stardom, long filming schedules, and public scrutiny only deepened her reliance on tobacco. As she aged, the health consequences became clearer, but her association with cigarettes remained, a symbol of a bygone era's allure. Sophia Loren remains a living legend, her beauty and charisma undiminished. Yet her story also illustrates how the culture of Hollywood and the world once celebrated habits that would later be seen for their dangers. Suzanne Pleshette. Suzanne Pleshette was a woman of style, wit, and undeniable presence. Her husky voice, dark eyes, and comedic timing made her a favorite on television and film, from The Birds to The Bob Newhart Show. But like many in her generation, Suzanne's life was shadowed by a heavy smoking habit that eventually led to tragedy. Plechette's addiction to cigarettes was well known, both in her professional and personal life. She often kept packs visible on her vanity, a testament to how integral smoking had become to her daily routine. The pressures of Hollywood, coupled with her natural nerves and high energy, fueled her reliance on tobacco as both a crutch and a comfort. In 2006, Suzanne was diagnosed with lung cancer and underwent surgery to remove part of her lung. Though she initially announced a recovery, the disease soon returned. Pleshette passed away in 2008 at the age of 70, leaving behind a legacy of sharp humor, intelligence, and trailblazing work for women in television. Her story is a powerful example of how even the brightest personalities can fall victim to addiction. Suzanne Plechette's voice and laughter are missed, but her struggle remains a warning for future generations. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was the original wild child of old Hollywood, a woman whose audacity, wit, and decadent lifestyle made her as infamous as she was admired. She dominated Broadway, radio, film, and television, with a voice so distinctive it was instantly recognizable. But nothing defined Tallulah's off-screen image, quite like her notorious love for cigarettes. Tallulah didn't just smoke. She made smoking an art form. Reports say she could burn through as many as 120 cigarettes a day, lighting one with the end of the last. Her raspy, gravelly voice, both alluring and intimidating, became her trademark, due in no small part to her decades-long tobacco habit. She flaunted her smoking and her vices with the same bravado she brought to her roles, never apologizing for living life on her own scandalous terms. Openly discussing her indulgences at a time when few women dared, Tallulah broke every rule in the Hollywood playbook. She was frank about her relationships, her sexuality, and her battles with addiction, making her a lightning rod for gossip and a heroine to those who saw her as a rebel against repressive norms. Her personal life was a whirlwind of parties, painkillers, and headline-making affairs, with cigarettes always at the center of the storm. By the 1960s, Tallulah's health was in steep decline. She suffered from malnutrition, addiction, and ultimately pneumonia, her weakened body unable to recover from years of abuse. Even as she faded, her wit and presence never left her. She died in 1968 at the age of 66, asking for bourbon and codeine in her last moments, a final nod to a life lived without compromise. Tallulah Bankhead's story is a fitting end to our countdown. A legend who smoked her way through the golden age, leaving behind a legacy as bright and brief as a match struck in the dark. Thank you for joining us on this smoky journey through the golden age of Hollywood's most unforgettable legends. If you enjoyed these behind-the-scenes stories and want more fascinating tales from classic cinema, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with fellow film lovers who appreciate Hollywood's rich and sometimes shadowy history. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for weekly deep dives into the stars, scandals, and secrets that shaped Hollywood. Your support means the world to us and helps keep these timeless stories alive. Until next time, keep the popcorn popping and the movie magic glowing. Thanks for watching.